Back, the gentlelady from California, Ms. Bass.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Horowitz, thank you for this report. It lays out in clear and unequivocal terms a conclusion that Republicans have resisted for years. The investigation into Secretary Clinton's emails and the decision to decline prosecution were both done properly without bias. In this report, you concluded, quote, "We did not find documentary or testimonial evidence that improper considerations, including political bias, directly affected the specific investigative decisions, or that the justification offered for these decisions were pretextual." Is that right?
That's correct.
Republican members have repeatedly declared that the investigation was illegitimate and have questioned many aspects of that investigation, from the Justice Department's use of immunity agreements to the timing of James Comey drafting process. Did you investigate these allegations?
The questions of, I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Republican members repeatedly declared that the investigation was illegitimate and questioned many aspects of the investigation, from the Justice Department's use of immunity agreements to the timing of James Comey drafting process. Did you investigate these allegations? Yes. In response to your report, Chairman Gowdy wrote, quote, "This report confirms investigative decisions made by the FBI during this investigation were unprecedented and deviated from traditional investigative procedures in favor of a much more permissive and voluntary approach." Chairman Goodlack similarly wrote, quote, "The Justice Department and FBI didn't treat her like any other criminal suspect and didn't follow standard investigative procedures." This doesn't seem to reflect your report's findings to me. In fact, your report explicitly states, and I quote, "Contrary to public perception, the mid-year team used compulsory process in the mid-year investigation." Your report also stated, quote, "We found that during these specific decisions were the result of discretionary judgments made during the course of an investigation by the mid-year agents and prosecutors, and that these judgment calls were not unreasonable." Is that right?
That's correct.
The report also concluded, quote, "We found no evidence that the conclusions by the department prosecutors were affected by bias or other improper considerations. Rather, we determined that they were based on the prosecutor's assessment of the facts, the law, and past department practice." Is that correct?
As to the prosecutorial decision, yes, that's correct.
Mr. Horowitz, I appreciate you being here today. I do want to ask you a couple of other questions. On June 29th, Democrats on this committee and the House Judiciary Committee sent you a letter raising concerns that Attorney General Sessions may have violated his recusal when he participated directly and personally in President Trump's decision to fire FBI Director James Comey. You testified last November that you had not made a decision, but that you were holding off while Special Prosecutor Mueller has an ongoing investigation. But you also said you would revisit your decision if new information came to light. Is this an accurate description?
Yes.
It now appears that Attorney General's violation of his recusal impacts issues well beyond the scope of the special counsel's probe. On November 13th, the Department of Justice sent a letter stating that the Attorney General has been directly involved in decisions regarding the appointment of a special counselor to investigate, and I quote, "the sale of Uranium One, alleged unlawful dealings related to the Clinton Foundation and other matters." This letter says that the Attorney General, and I quote, "directed senior federal prosecutors to evaluate whether a special counsel should be appointed and told those prosecutors to report their findings, quote, directly to the Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General." Representative Raskin asked you about that letter, and you said you would receive and review this additional information. On November 30th, Ranking Member Cummings followed up and sent you a letter providing this additional information and again requesting you to conduct this review. On December 12th, you responded with a letter that said, and I quote, "Your letter asked the OIG to conduct an investigation separate from that of the special counsel." Do you have any update to provide at this time?
I don't, and I stand by what I said earlier. I think it's important for us as an OIG to consider what other investigative activities ongoing out there and consider that, keep that in mind as we're deciding when would be an appropriate time to make a determination whether to go forward with a review.
The report your office issued last week that is the subject of today's hearing discusses text messages sent by FBI employees who previously were working on the special counsel's investigation. Can you explain why in that instance you were willing to conduct a review related to the special counsel's investigation, but you will not review the Attorney General's potentially ongoing violations of his recusal agreement?
Certainly. So when we undertook this review, and started finding the problematic text messages back in 2017, and ultimately gathered the evidence we gathered in July of 2017, and then met with the Deputy Attorney General and the Special Counsel to inform them of what we had found, because at the time Mr. Strzok was working for the Special Counsel. I also discussed the matter with the Special Counsel about what we believed was our need to collect all of the text messages from those individuals, even beyond the Clinton email investigation, so that we could make an assessment of how their views and their conduct impacted the Clinton email
Okay,
investigation.
thank you. I believe that you could review today whether the Attorney General is violating his recusal when he participates in matters that are unrelated to the Special Counsel's investigation. I yield back my time.
The gentlelady from California yields back. The gentleman